After Iran attacks Israel with 180 ballistic missiles, is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about to order a massive military strike against Iran? Why is President Biden against it and Trump for it? In-depth analysis, plus an exclusive interview with former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. All this and more tonight on the Rosenberg Report. I'm in Denver right now, and I want to bring you this news about Iran, Israel, and the war that may be coming. As 10 million Israelis have been marking and grieving the one-year anniversary of October 7th, and the 1,200 Israelis and others that were slaughtered that dreadful day, and the more than 250 Israelis and foreign nationals that were kidnapped and dragged into Gaza that day, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his top advisors have been huddled together behind closed doors discussing how best to respond to the nearly 200 missiles that Iran fired at the Jewish state last week. On All Israel News, I wrote that it's time for an October surprise against the Iranian regime. It's time for Israel to decapitate the Iranian regime, destroy its oil refineries, and destroy its nuclear facilities. Israel has crushed Hamas in Gaza. Yes, there are still mop-up operations to be done there, and we still need to get our hostages back. But the good news is that Hamas has been vanquished. Hezbollah is on the road to destruction as well. Israel has not only taken out Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, but all 18 of the 18 most senior terrorist leaders of Hezbollah, and they've killed or wounded another 4,000 Hezbollah terrorists who had those exploding pagers and walkie-talkies. What's more, in recent weeks, Israel has destroyed upwards of 50% of Hezbollah's missile arsenal and has found and blown up Hezbollah terror tunnels near the border. Iran's terror proxies are dead or dying, and now is the time to finish the job. To their shame, President Biden and Vice President Harris have been putting enormous pressure on Israel to agree to a ceasefire in Lebanon and only respond in a very minimal, quote, proportional manner to Iran's unprecedented missile attacks last week. And the White House, State Department, and Pentagon have made it crystal clear that they would not support a massive Israeli military attack to destroy Iran's nuclear program.
Today, Iran launched nearly 200 ballistic missiles towards targets in Israel. The United States military coordinated closely with the Israeli Defense Forces to help defend Israel against this attack. U.S. naval destroyers joined Israeli air defense units in firing interceptors to shoot down inbound missiles. President Biden and Vice President Harris monitored the attack and the response from the White House Situation Room, joined in person and remotely by their national security team. We are still working with the IDF and the authorities in Israel to assess the impact of the attack. But at this time, and I stress at this time, we do not know of any deaths in Israel. We are tracking the reported death of a Palestinian civilian in Jericho in the West Bank. We do not know of any damage to aircraft or strategic military assets in Israel. In short, based on what we know at this point, this attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective. This was first and foremost the result of the professionalism of the IDF, but in no small part because of the skilled work of the U.S. military and meticulous joint planning in anticipation of the attack. We are also aware of reports of a terrorist attack in Jaffa that took the lives of a number of Israeli civilians and wounded several others today. Our condolences go out to the families of the victims and to the family of the Palestinian civilian in Jericho. Obviously, my update here is based on early reports, and we reserve the right to amend and adjust as necessary as we gather more information. The word fog of war was invented for a situation like this. This is a fluid situation. We will consult with the Israelis on next steps in terms of the response and how to deal with what Iran has just done, and we will continue to monitor for further threats and attacks from Iran and its proxies. We are particularly focused on protecting U.S. service members in the region. And with that, I'll take just a few questions.
Tell us anything about Iran and Israel's possible retaliation.
I called a meeting of the G7 today. We're working on a joint statement all of us agree on. from Japan to France to Germany to etc. And what we're doing in that regard is we're making it clear that there are things that have to be done. And it's obviously Iran has gone way it's way off court. We're going to put together a joint statement, hasn't been done yet. It'll be done before too long, probably by the time we land. And there's going to be some sanctions imposed on Iran.
Would you support an attack on Iran's nuclear sites by Israel?
The answer is no. I think there's things we'll be discussing with the Israelis what they're going to do, but all 7 of us agree that they have a right to respond, but they should respond in proportion.
Sir, can I ask you, what is your advice to Israel as far as how they should respond to this right now?
Leave that place.
Okay. When will you talk to Bibi?
Well, we've been talking to Bibi's people the whole time. And that's not necessarily to talk to Bibi. I'll probably be talking to him relatively soon, I guess.
The call between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu was the first time they've spoken in 7 weeks, which reflects the overall frosty relationship there. Washington sources say Kamala Harris was on the call, too. The whole of the Middle East has been on tenterhooks since the 1st of October, when Iran attacked Israel with almost 200 ballistic missiles. And that very night, Benjamin Netanyahu went on national television and said that Iran was going to pay. Well, today, Israel's defense minister doubled down on that threat. Yoav Gallant said an Israeli strike against Iran will be lethal, precise, and surprising. The question, of course, is what Israel might hit. President Biden has said he won't support an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. America is also putting pressure on Israel not to hit Iran's oil installations, because if it did, oil prices would skyrocket, and so would gas prices at the pump in America, just as the country is heading to the polls.
Yet a growing number of senior U.S. and Israeli leaders share the view, which I share with them, that now is exactly the time to strike the Iranian regime hard, fast, and decisively. Among them, Senator Lindsey Graham and former National Security Advisor John Bolton, both Republicans, and former Defense Secretary William Cohen, a Democrat.
And here's the policy I'm trying to implement. No longer should we consider Hezbollah and Hamas different from Iran. I said today, an attack by Hezbollah against the state of Israel should be considered an attack by Iran against the state of Israel. This is a charade that needs to stop. There is no Hamas or Hezbollah without Iran supplying the money and the weapons. So if there is an attack by Hezbollah against Israel or a direct attack by Iran against Israel, I am calling tonight for Israel to destroy the oil refineries that fuel this terrorist beast. Destroy the oil refineries, and they will knock this off. Until you hit the Ayatollah where it hurts in his pocketbook, he could care less about how many Hezbollah people you kill or Hamas people you kill, but he does care about his economy and his ability to make money to wage war. So to our friends in Israel, knock out their refineries.
Coming up next on the Rosenberg Report, why does former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett believe the time has come to topple the Iranian regime and destroy their nuclear and oil facilities? Find out when the Rosenberg Report continues on TBN right after the break. Yet a growing number of senior U.S. and Israeli leaders share the view, which I share with them, that now is exactly the time to strike the Iranian regime hard, fast, and decisively. Among them, Senator Lindsey Graham and former National Security Advisor John Bolton, both Republicans, and former Defense Secretary William Cohen, a Democrat. Also among them, former Israeli Prime Minister and former Israeli Defense Minister Naftali Bennett. Just hours before Israel assassinated Hezbollah chief Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, I hosted Bennett at the 2024 Epicenter briefing, a private, intimate, invitation-only gathering that my wife and I host each year for evangelical Christian leaders and prayer partners of the Joshua Fund, All Israel News, and All Arab News. Bennett was our keynote speaker, and he took questions, and he could not have been clearer on how to deal with Iran.
Thank you for coming to this group and taking the time out of your schedule and gracing us with this. We appreciate it very, very much, and we hope we'll see more interactions with you and the Christian community. But if you were Prime Minister right now, what would you be doing to neutralize the threats by the Iranian regime, et cetera, the seven? And do you think a full-scale invasion of Lebanon is needed?
Any other questions?
Ben's got the easy ones.
Yeah. Well, I'll share with you my view of Iran, and it's developed throughout the years. You know, I've been fighting Hezbollah since 1992, and gradually I realized that we're making a big strategic mistake. Our enemy is Iran, and I call it the octopus of terror. The octopus has its head in Tehran, in Iran, and it sends its tentacles all across the Middle East through proxies. In Lebanon, it's Hezbollah. In Gaza, it's Hamas. In Yemen, it's the Houthis, and so on and so forth.
You need an H in front of your name to get funding and weapons,
yes,
apparently, from,
you got it.
from Iran.
Exactly.
So, you know.
And what we've been doing, I think unwisely, for 30 years, was we've been fighting the fingers of this octopus. But the head of the octopus, 1,000 kilometers away from us in Tehran, is laying back, supine, enjoying life, and immune from any danger. Yet they are the ones who are funding, training, arming, and commanding these tentacles to exhaust Israel, to shed our blood. And then I came up with what I call the octopus doctrine, or strategy, which essentially says we should try and avoid local tactical skirmishes and redirect our national security energy to weaken Iran and topple that regime. And I want to be very, very clear about our goal. Our goal is to topple, or should be, to topple Iran's regime. And that's what we need to do. We need to topple Iran's regime ASAP, certainly before they acquire a nuclear weapon.
Immediately after Iran attacked Israel, Bennett put out the following statement on social media, quote, "Israel now has its greatest opportunity in 50 years to change the face of the Middle East. The leadership of Iran, which used to be good at chess, has just made a terrible mistake," he wrote. "We must act now to destroy Iran's nuclear program, its central energy facilities, and to fatally cripple this terrorist regime. Israel," he continued, "should strike the head of the octopus of terror that, in its cowardice, has sent its tentacles, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, etc., to murder us, while the Ayatollahs sat safely in their palaces in Tehran." Bennett continued, "The octopus's tentacles are temporarily paralyzed. Now comes the head. We must remove this terrible threat to our children's future. We can grant the Iranian people an opportunity to rise up and shake off the regime that tyrannizes its women and its daughters. We have the justification. We have the tools. Now that Hezbollah and Hamas are paralyzed, Iran stands exposed. Over this last terrible year, Iranian tentacles murdered our families," Bennett continued. "They raped our daughters, kidnapped our children, ransacked our towns, burned our fields, fired on our ships, terrorized children in Kiryat Shmona, Kfar Aza, and Sderot, emptied out whole regions of our land, humiliated us. Now is the moment," he concluded. "A nation of lions has united and has proven its strength over the last year. It has yearned for a change, for action, for so very long. There are times when history knocks at our door and we must open it. This opportunity must not be missed." Now again, Biden and Harris are putting tremendous and terrible pressure on Israel not to take decisive action against Iran. So are the British and the French governments, both announcing that they'll no longer sell Israel weapons to defend ourselves.
I have a message for President Macron. Today, Israel is defending itself on 7 fronts against the enemies of civilization. We're fighting in Gaza against Hamas, those savages who murdered, raped, beheaded, and burned our people on October 7th. We're fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah, the most heavily armed terror organization in the world, which was planning an even greater massacre than October 7th on our northern border, and that has rocketed Israeli towns and cities for nearly a year. We're fighting against the Houthis in Yemen and the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria that together have launched hundreds of drones and missile attacks against Israel. We're fighting against terrorists in Judea and Samaria who are trying to murder civilians in the heart of our cities. And we're fighting against Iran, which last week fired over 200 ballistic missiles directly at Israel, and which stands behind the seven-front war against Israel. As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them. Is Iran imposing an arms embargo on Hezbollah, on the Houthis, on Hamas, and on its other proxies? Of course not. The axis of terror stands together. But countries who supposedly oppose this terror axis call for an arms embargo on Israel. What a disgrace. Well, let me tell you this. Israel will win with or without their support, but their shame will continue long after the war is won. For in defending ourselves against this barbarism, Israel is defending civilizations against those who seek to impose a dark age of fanaticism on all of us. Rest assured, Israel will fight until the battle is won, for our sake and for the sake of the peace and security of the entire world.
Biden and Harris are putting tremendous and terrible pressure on Israel not to take decisive action against Iran. So are the British and the French governments, both announcing that they'll no longer sell Israel weapons to defend ourselves. As a result, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is being tested as never before. And the question is, will he bow to such pressure, or will he order the IDF into battle against Iran? At this hour, we don't yet know. But one thing is certain. If Israel attacks Iran's nuclear program, it will be aided by the treasure trove of intelligence that it picked up when Netanyahu ordered several years ago the Mossad, Israel's legendary spy agency, to break in to a top secret facility in the heart of Tehran and steal Iran's entire nuclear weapons archives, all of their plans, designs, and locations for building nuclear warheads and bombs. How exactly the Mossad pulled off the greatest heist in its history is told in another must-read book, Target Tehran, which is now out in paperback. The big question is whether Netanyahu and his team have already made the decision to attack, and now they're talking about getting everything ready and picking which tools they're going to use and in which order, or whether Netanyahu is potentially succumbing to pressure from the U.S., don't do it. Now, it wouldn't just be pressure from Biden and Harris saying don't do it. Almost certainly, Biden and Harris would be offering sweeteners to Israel to say, look, let's work together to attack this and that, but not go big, right? Or Biden and Harris could be offering more military aid, or, a series of other things that Netanyahu might say, all right, I won't attack Iran now, but I get these things from the United States. And of course, then he needs to wait until, November, maybe December, until we know for sure who is the next president of the United States. Interestingly enough, Biden and Harris are telling Netanyahu, don't go big, don't take out the Iran nuclear facilities in particular, whereas former president of the United States, Donald Trump, is telling Netanyahu, go for it. This is the moment you should hit Iran and hit them hard, including the nuclear weapons facilities.
They asked him, what do you think about Iran? Would you hit Iran? And he goes, as long as they don't hit the nuclear stuff. That's the thing you want to hit, right? I said, I think he's got that one wrong. Isn't that what you're supposed to hit? I mean, it's the biggest risk we have. Nuclear weapons, the power of nuclear weapons.
Interestingly enough, if Netanyahu decides to strike Iran's nuclear program, he will be aided, the IDF will be aided by the treasure trove of intelligence that the Mossad, Israel's famed and fabled secret services, a spy agency, the treasure trove of data and intelligence that the Mossad gained when Netanyahu several years ago ordered the Mossad to secretly infiltrate Iran's nuclear archives in a secure facility in the heart of Tehran, the capital of Iran, and to steal the crown jewels, the nuclear crown jewels of Iran, to actually steal the very plans, diagrams, charts, maps, all the things necessary for Iran to build nuclear weapons. They kept them in a very specific and secure facility in Tehran. Israel figured out where that facility was, and then figured out how to infiltrate it, and then figured out how to break in to the secure vaults inside that facility, and then figured out how to get several tons of the actual documents and load them onto trucks and get them out of Tehran, and then get out of Iran, and then get back to Israel, translate them, and then release them to the world. This is all documented, this extraordinary heist, the greatest heist in the history of the Mossad, maybe in the history of intelligence, when Israel stole the nuclear crown jewels of the Iranian regime, all their plans to build nuclear weapons, and then release them. This story is told in a new book called Target Tehran, which came out last year in paperback or in hardcover. I loved it and covered it then, and now is just out in paperback. And in the coming weeks, the Rosenberg Report is going to show you interviews I did with the authors of that book, Target Tehran, and we're going to look at or talk to some of the key players, both Israeli and American, that were involved in that operation and have a perspective on this incredible heist. My point is that Israel knows more about Iran's nuclear program than any spy agency in the world. And so, if Netanyahu decides to go, he's going to be aided by information that nobody else has, and that Iran doesn't even fully understand what Israel has. Okay, a few more points. Let's say Netanyahu goes. Let's say he orders the IDF to attack. Whatever combo platter of tools in his toolbox, Israel goes and it hits hard. Now there's two options. There's two scenarios that we need to consider. One scenario is that it goes very, very badly, and that Israel does damage, but this inflames Iran, doesn't decapitate the Iranian regime, doesn't knock out all that Israel hopes to, and that the Iranian retaliation is apocalyptic. Okay, that's a scenario in which Iran launches many or all of the 3,000 long-range ballistic missiles that it has against Israel. Can Israel's multi-layered, multi-tiered missile defense system knock down all of those ballistic missiles incoming? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000? That's a big question. Then, what if Iran is able to tell Hezbollah, even though Israel has destroyed 50% of Hezbollah's missile arsenal, what if Iran is able to get the word to the rest of those missile commanders to shoot all the rest of Hezbollah's arsenal? That could be another 75 or 100,000 missiles raining down in Israel. And then there's one more scenario in which Iran's leadership activates terror sleeper cells all across the United States, Europe, and around the world to kill Americans, kill Israelis, kill Jews, kill Christians, and create havoc. So that's a bad, terrible scenario that could result. There's another scenario in which it goes very, very well, that Israel hits hard, it hits decisively, and it takes out the Iranian regime. In a future YouTube exclusive, we'll go into this even more, but I could see a scenario in which Iran is so neutralized and the region is so shocked by Israel's brazen strike, even with Biden and Harris being opposed to it, that Israel emerges as the dominant superpower in the entire Middle East. The Saudis decide to make peace with Israel. And that Hezbollah is so dismantled and so disoriented that the Lebanese people rise up, and the Lebanese government and army rises up and overthrows Hezbollah and decides we want a peace treaty with Israel. Can you imagine a Lebanese peace treaty with Israel, a Saudi peace treaty with Israel? And then the question is, if Israel is able to assassinate the supreme leader of Iran and its top leadership, is it possible the Iranian people would rise up and overthrow this wicked regime? There are a lot of variables. Things could go very badly or very, very well. And that's why we as Christians need to be praying, interceding on behalf of Israel for the peace of Jerusalem, the security of Israel, and the liberation of Iran, Lebanon, and Gaza from the reign of terror that Iran has imposed on the Palestinians, the Lebanese, and the Iranian people. A lot to pray about, a lot to watch. Keep tracking with the Rosenberg Report and, of course, All Israel News for the latest. And you can follow me on social media as well. This is Joel Rosenberg in Denver. And Lord willing, I'll see you next week right here on the Rosenberg Report.